top stories, city residents in Addis denounced the terrorist TPLF junta at a pro-National Defense Force rally. And ministry says GERD second filling proves Ethiopia's argument of no harm on downstream countries. Hello, many thanks for joining us. You're watching Addis News Hour from the Ethiopian Broadcasting Corporation. With the news, I'm Tabitha John. Do stay with us. City residents in Addis denounced the terrorist TPLF junta at a pro-National Defense Force rally held today. The residents expressed support to the National Defense Force and vowed to remain in unison to defend Ethiopia's sovereignty. Kasahun Jani has this report.
Tens and thousands of people took the streets of Addis to openly denounce the terrorist TPLF act. City residents chanted and displayed several banners that openly condemned the junta group and its unlawful acts. During the event, Addis Deputy Mayor Addis Ababa recalled the chance given to the TPLF group to remain in peace, but the junta hideously intensified its brutal atrocities in the past several months.
Our defense force is an emblem of our sovereignty. We are on the side of our defense force. The TPLF terrorist group is the enemy of all Ethiopians and above all an enemy to humanity. We stand united in the fight against this terrorist group and its allies in Ethiopia. They will not revive. Our history shows that it's impossible to force Ethiopians to kneel down against their sovereignty. We want everyone to know that Ethiopia is a country built on the solid rock foundation so that it will not be destroyed by gangs who don't want national unity. We will not compromise on our sovereignty. We will fight against the forces that are trying to destroy the country.
Concerning the ground, Ethiopian Renaissance Sudan congratulated residents of Addis Ababa for their efforts. The deputy mayor also underscored that the nation has achieved great success in accomplishing the second round of filling.
Ethiopia's success in filling the second round of the Renaissance Dam and holding peaceful national elections have given some lessons to the international community. The demonstration in support of the defense force is a sign of our unity.
Residents of Addis Ababa staged a peaceful demonstration in Meskel Square. The protesters condemned the TPLF terrorists and expressed readiness to defend their country with all their sweat and blood. Some of the slogans said, "We are on the side of the gallant defense force. We will defeat the TPLF junta because it was the enemy of all Ethiopians. We will complete the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam without any help from anyone. We support our defense forces that are defending the sovereignty of our country, and we are ready to accept any national call," and so on.
Thousands of people took to the streets of Addis to show their support for Ethiopian federal troops fighting in the northern region of Tigray. Speakers called on Ethiopians to be unified against TPLF forces. Alula Taklamariam takes a look into Al Jazeera's report as follows.
Thousands of people have rallied in Addis Ababa.
Thousands took the streets of Addis in a mass rally condemning the belligerent TPLF forces, saying that they have been using children as soldiers and shields. They also accused the international community, including the international media, of biasness in their coverage in favor of the unlawful TPLF cliques. Now the Ethiopian National Army has already withdrawn from Tigray, but it has been accused by human rights organizations for an alleged atrocities committed in Tigray in the last few months. The National Defense Force alongside Eritrean soldiers and Amhara Special Force have been accused of the human rights abuses in Tigray. Yet, investigations have been undertaken by national and continental human rights bodies, and actual results are expected to be uncovered in the upcoming August. Al Jazeera's report indicated that aid workers in Tigray are struggling to get as much people as possible, but infrastructure has remained a challenge in some parts. And the fighting, which has not come to an end in the region, still needs emphasis, according to the report.
Has been glorified. Our everlasting.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam would continue to be a source of cooperation for the Nile River riparian countries, including the downstream states. In a message he posted today in Arabic on his Twitter page, the Prime Minister noted Ethiopia's successful completion of the second filling of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam as per the scheduled time. Prime Minister Abiy highlighted that Ethiopia conducted the filling of the dam in a way that does not significantly harm the downstream countries, adding it has regulated the water flow, deterring flooding. The Prime Minister said that the filling of the dam would never significantly harm the downstream countries and underscored that it would be a source of cooperation among riparian countries. Many had expected that Ethiopia's move to carry out the second filling of its mega dam may anger Egypt and Sudan, as they had been opposing the filling of the dam before a binding agreement is signed. The move, however, has silenced voices that seem provocative and the fears that forecasted worse scenarios about the deadlock. Briefing journalists on Thursday, spokesperson of the Ethiopian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Dina Mufti, said the reaction from the two riparian countries has so far been positive. Solomon Danyi has this report.
The dispute between Ethiopia, Sudan and Egypt over Ethiopia's mega dam seems to turn to falling action, despite widespread fears that the second filling of the dam would exacerbate the situation. Ethiopia's determination to continue with its plan of dam construction appears to overwhelm the stern position of Egypt and Sudan to halt the second filling of the mega hydropower dam before a binding agreement. According to a spokesperson of the Ethiopian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Dina Mufti, the second filling vindicates Ethiopia's argument that the filling of the dam will have no impact to the riparian countries.
Ethiopia still believes that the Grand Renaissance Dam is to the benefit not only of Ethiopia but of the low riparian countries as well. We still would like to reiterate and emphasize our previous positions of no harm policy. And we insist still for win-win positions with the low riparian countries. And we urge on the low riparian countries to come to the negotiating table and negotiate earnestly and faithfully so that we can reach at win-win situations.
Briefing journalists Thursday, Dina said the reaction from the two downstream countries is so far been positive.
The president of Egypt was saying feeling doesn't hurt them, and that is welcome. And we urge them to do that. This is what we have been saying all along. All I have seen is actually there are gestures. There are gestures of really accepting what has happened, but insisting on immediate talks, which is we welcome. And we are ready for the talks, and that's not a problem. Anytime, as soon as the Congolese call us to the negotiation table, we'll go and discuss earnestly. And we don't have any hesitations from doing that, because we have doing it all the way and faithfully.
Reports are emerging that Egypt is entreating Israel and China to negotiate the three countries on the issue, while Ethiopia's position on AU negotiation remains intact.
Ministry of Foreign Affairs said embassies to be closed will be announced anytime soon. Ministry spokesperson Dina Mufti expressed the current move is part of an institutional reform based on latest foreign policy priorities. Kasahon Chane reports.
ETV English approached Dina Mufti to learn the country's latest move in reforming its foreign policy. Dina said the government's intention is not to cut the number of embassies, but to undertake swift institutional reforms that help galvanize Ethiopia's diplomatic sector.
To make our diplomatic institutions efficient, to make our embassies and consulate offices efficient, in fact, with the consideration of the austerity measures as well. Because of the COVID, and because of international economic situations and other situations, there is a need for austerity measure as well. There is a need also for digitalizing the diplomatic practices. You can make effective diplomatic moves around the world by also, rearranging, reestablishing and reshaping your institutions like the embassies. And that is the intention. Otherwise, the details of which embassies to be closed and which embassies are to stay or to merge has not come out yet. And it's something that is going on and something that is under study, and hopefully we'll make it public.
In a similar development, Ethiopia's long-serving ambassador, Runa Zena, on his part underscored that diplomacy is managed not by cutting the number of embassies, but by making reforms. Assigning the right person at the right place would be an important tool to do so, he added.
You have to assess where you should assign an ambassador or where you should open an embassy. Study has to be. You simply can't say, okay, we don't have an embassy here, let us open. What interest do we have, say? What are things which we cannot get through other means? Public. Or our interest in that country is, how big is our interest in that country? We should assess all those things and open, because these days, foreign currency is Ethiopia's main constraint for everything. Yeah. So you have to economize. But we should not close all embassies, or we should not disregard.
Meanwhile, another political expert, Ndala Naguse, stressed Runa's stand in strengthening the nation's foreign policy, calling upon all states to play their share in this regard.
Diplomacy cannot be achieved only using few diplomats. So the government at this time should change the platform based on the intention of its main principle. The diplomacy should be based on citizenship diplomacy. Again, public diplomacy, it cannot be done using only few embassies. So that is why the very issue is the platform should fit with this intention, this thing. So Ethiopian can take this sun, every Ethiopian throughout the world, unlike that of God. This is the intention, maybe issued by the Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed. That is the intention. Maybe some may just incline it closing to no.
It is to be recalled that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed suggested to cut the number of embassies while addressing the parliament early this month.
Welcome back again. Scholars from different global entities are voicing shock over TPLF's use of child soldiers. They are also urging the world to strongly condemn what they call international crime and TPLF sacrificial lambs, and silence means generational shame, they warn. Shifara Ulako looks into the matter.
Some international media outlets have been unveiling TPLF use of children as soldiers in the state of Tigray. Following this, concerns are coming in from different angles, urging the global communities to condemn the act. The director of the Bolzili School of International Affairs and professor in Wilfrid Laurier University's Political Science Department, Anne Fitzgerald, says the world must strongly condemn the use of child soldiers in Tigray. Silence in the face of this disaster will be a generational shame, as it is a war crime.
Children under 15 as soldiers is prohibited by international humanitarian law. Also, it is considered or defined as war crime by ICC, International Criminal Court. This has to be avoided, let alone using them as soldiers. But the mere fact that there is war in their community hurts them more than anything. Yes. So the international community should take serious measures in this.
The renowned journalist, author and historian Jeff Pierce also writes that the truth about child soldiers is slowly coming out, which he called TPLF's sacrificial lambs. He says a source tells him that there are a lot of young children who were forced and brought to the front from central Tigray. Some of these kids are begging the local women to hide them. They do not know where they are right now, and they do not even know the road and direction to go back to their parents. The TPLF are also looking for potential recruits, some of whom are high school graduates, and the child soldiers range in age between 9 and 15 years old. He also says exposing child soldiers within context is one thing, glamorizing them as freedom fighters and without mentioning that this is an international war crime is contemptible.
The use of children in wars as soldiers is a war crime. It should be it should be taken seriously, right? So TPLF forces and other forces also in Africa, including the case actually in Ghana, by the use of children as soldiers in war times, by Joseph Kony of the Lord Resistance Army, has been a case that has attracted the attention of the world and child rights institutions. And similarly, now we have seen pictures coming out of that, and even international media witnessing those pictures, and journalists speaking about what they have observed on the ground, right? So this should have been seriously condemned, but the media in the West is not doing so. You know, human rights institutions are not loudly speaking about it. This is something that needs to be strongly condemned.
Others are also calling on the international communities to take action. The Ethiopian American Civic Council has also asked the U.S. Department of State to condemn the use of child soldiers in Tigray by the TPLF. In an open letter it wrote to President Biden, the council reproached the U.S. government's policy, mainly run by Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, for going against Ethiopia, which has been a staunch ally of the United States for over 100 years.
Agency for Refugees and Returnees Affairs, ARA, has issued a statement on the situations of Eritrean refugees in Maizabri area, calling on the international community to comprehend the situation there. It wants the situation of Eritrean refugees in Maiaini and Adi Harush to get a lasting solution in a swift manner. Daniel Kasahun takes it from here.
In an effort to avert adversities, the statement indicated the agency is working hard to accelerate the establishment of the new camp at North Gondar zone of Dabar district, where it received 91 hectares of land. This is meant to provide services to refugees that are escaping the conflict zone. In this regard, the agency says it has got full support from the local authorities to use the schools as temporary shelters. Vital items are already transported to the area, and also few partners are also responding to provide support. However, the situation is deteriorating and continues to be a matter of grave concern following the TPLF's presence in the refugee hosting areas. So far, at least 6 refugees have been reported killed by the militants. In violation of the international humanitarian law, the rebels deployed heavy artillery in the refugee camps, and there appears continuous militant activity and sporadic shootings. The statement also mentions ambulances and infrastructures, including health centers, are confiscated and being used for military services. Consequently, at least 2 refugees are reported dead due to lack of health services, and mothers are delivering in dire conditions. Authority for Refugees and Returnees Affairs and other partners' properties, including World Food Program warehouses, have been looted and confiscated. Refugees are being forced to contribute in kind and in cash to the rebels. The agency informs there are reports of forceful deportation of refugees in masses to unknown locations and excursions to relocate, some of them to Hitsats and Shimalbad, the refugee camps that had been closed following attacks by the same group. To date, the international humanitarian organizations have not been able to access refugee camps and also could not deliver service to the refugees. The statement further indicated the Ethiopian government has reaffirmed its commitment to the safety of refugees and calls on the international community to unequivocally condemn such atrocities. Besides, it urges the world to support its endeavors to save the refugees from imminent danger they are facing.
A US-based breakthrough news outlet criticizes America's attempt to back TPLF in power. Goshumelisho presents the story as follows.
Following the repeated request of the international community for ceasefire in Tigray, it is to be recalled that the Ethiopian government recently withdrew its troops from the region. Despite this, the terrorist TPLF cliques still instigate war in the Amhara border and Afar regional state, as well as obstructing the humanitarian assistance. But no international community or media outlet were heard of openly comment on this matter. Eugene Prayer, a journalist and host of the Punch-Out with a US Breakthrough News, said the Western world has never been concerned about Tigray's people well-being and safety, rather backing U.S. desire to back TPLF in power.
And we do know that the TPLF had been having back-channel conversations, well, not that back-channel, with the European Union and with other forces in the lead-up to the conflict. And certainly they have these long, long ties, especially to the United States, especially over the issue of regional foreign policy, in particular the issue of Somalia, that it seems that they at least must have had some feeling that they could expect a certain amount of support from the so-called international community, from the United States, from Europe, and others. Now, they had also been supporting Abiy Ahmed, so the whole thing has a little bit of murkiness to it. And, I can't say for sure, but it does seem that the dam issue, the Grand Renaissance Dam, may have been the triggering issue. Now, as you mentioned during the Trump administration, the Trump administration have been pushing very hard, saying, well, let's go ahead and we're going to help you with the negotiations between Sudan, Egypt, Ethiopia, and so on and so forth. And ultimately, those negotiations broke down because the Trump administration took the side of Egypt 100%.
TPLF, under its reign, committed massive massacres in 2005, the journalist noted.
The beginning of the, quote-unquote human rights abuses come into play. I mean, certainly, in 2005, for instance, they were widely accused in the Gabela region of conducting massive massacres of all sorts, using rape as a weapon, forced displacements of people. This is also something they were known for in the lower Omo Valley, where they displaced tens of thousands of people in order to put massive sugar plantations there that were for extractive agriculture. They have been accused many, many different times, credibly accused they were, and really proven to have shot live ammunition all the time into peaceful protests of all types.
The journalist and political analyst underscored that TPLF was also known conducting fraudulent elections and abuse by power.
Every election, they were winning by 99%. So the elections were widely recognized to be essentially fraudulent, at least fraudulent in the sense that they weren't really having support of 99% of the people. And, you can go on and talking about all of these different elements and all of these different pieces, but that was their reputation in the African continent. That was their reputation internationally. Interestingly enough, many of the people criticizing the current Ethiopian regime the hardest and really saying almost nothing about the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front.
The analyst further said the desire of US is to weaken Ethiopia and impose its selfish interest upon Ethiopia.
According to credible inside information sources, Getachew Redda has ordered TPLF operatives in the region to ensure that no household gets humanitarian assistance unless they send their children to fight. An independent journalist called upon the government to make efficient use of lobbyists and aggressively work with foreign media outlets to rectify one-sided and often ill-informed reports by Western media regarding Ethiopia. Talking to ETV English, the journalist expressed dismay with foreign media distortions, which he warned will easily get out of hand if not handled on time. Habtamu Ashagwe takes us through the rest of the story.
Civilians on the streets using sniper rifles and machine guns.
The evidence suggests the Ethiopian Air Force is responsible.
Some foreign media outlets are reporting the conflict in Tigray, often in a distorted way. While some are victims of misinformation, others are clearly dancing in the camp of disinformation. Regarding the recent acts of provocations by the TPLF mafia group, prompting the government to protect itself via active fighting, most Western media outlets are blowing the situation out of proportion. Talking to ETV, Samuel Getachew, who is independent journalist, said Ethiopia needs to work cooperatively with foreign media institutions so as to help change Ethiopia's distorted image intentionally. Senior officials and top government figures must avail themselves to media institutions and with these platforms to expose TPLF's cover-up and distorted stories, he suggested. When more government doors are open to media institutions, particularly on current affairs, confusions will disappear, he said.
Ethiopia needs to work with them. Ethiopia needs to understand that media is really important, not just looking at them as a potential enemy, but as allies. If you look at other parts, you mentioned the northern parts, the reason they have had this kind of focus, the problem like the famine, the fightings, and everything is overwhelming. It's really, really sad. But, the leadership has really been opened to international media. They've been communicating with them. They've been, when they approach them, they're able to speak to them.
According to Samuel, Addis Ababa needs to encourage the young and skilled professionals to do more positive stories, while at the same time showing pitfalls in the system.
I think the government needs to be open, understand the role of media, and tell their side of the story. If they don't tell their side of the story, there's always an option that many medias are willing to go to. I think Ethiopia needs to open up and understand the importance and the impact of the media. I see the social media that are being sent by the government, but that's not enough. When a major media outlet comes to your country from a foreign nation, use them, at least talk to them. At least you've given them permission to come to the country and give them the benefits of the doubts. I don't think we've given them a chance to tell the side of the Ethiopian story that needs to be told, and that I understand many are willing to tell, but the system isn't there for the media and for the government side to be connected.
Samuel also advises the government against releasing brief and often unclear social media messages regarding current affairs, adding it will be wiser to give opportunities for the media to grasp the realities through press conferences.
And I don't think Ethiopia has really been covered fairly in the past or in the present. I don't think we have been able to sell our stories. We lack the experience of really selling our country to tourists, for example, or telling our story. We focus on buildings, for example, in Addis Ababa, where the majority of Ethiopians reside outside of the capital. So sometimes we have to look in the mirror and try to understand the shortcomings that's within us before we blame others. But again, I don't think it's been covered fairly, but it's a work in progress, and I think there are many young, skilled people that can help, and I hope the government will take them up and try to really tell the Ethiopian story that needs to be told.
In business news, improving productive capacity and giving priority on supply resolutions are among major interventions to curb inflation in Ethiopia. An agricultural economist and consultant, Demis Chanyalo, reiterates government intervention in the market is crucial to avert inflation in the country. Talking to ETV English, Demis stressed that government should revise its intervention systems to effectively address problems in the economy. Jerusalem Betha has this report.
According to the Central Statistical Agency, inflation in June rose by 24.5%. Alarmingly, food inflation has risen by 28.7% in June compared to the same period last year.